So you're looking at a constellation that is unlikely to occur in the wild, in that here we are, 5 adults, unrelated. It's not Thanksgiving, and we are all of different generations with different perspectives, ages and stages. And we're going to have a conversation about how ageism manifests in real life. And I think we may also broaden our understanding of ageism. We're all different ages. And I think one of the, and stages, and one of the conceptions of ageism, I think we've established, yesterday, is that ageism is a form of discrimination. And in our understanding, it is a form of discrimination that's applied rampantly and sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly against older adults. But I think what's going to emerge in this conversation is that ageism manifests in all sorts of ways, that we're an ageist society and that we're all shaped by perceptions and misperceptions of age and what that tells us about someone. So I am going to introduce our wonderful panel, and we're going to hear different perspectives. From my right, Kate Rarey, representing Gen Z, is a producer at Palisades Media Ventures. Ken's wonderful outfit. That's a crew that's put on this conference for us. She's a Pittsburgh-based writer, project manager, and producer of the absolutely wonderful Grand People video series that many of you have seen. And Bill Greene is a proud boomer. We are well represented. Bill is a principal at Mindshare Partners and has had a long career in management consulting, particularly in the HR space. To my left is Erin Mcinrue Savage, and Erin is going to be our stand-in for our incredibly overworked yet wildly competent millennial. Erin is the director of corporate marketing at Rippling. She is the parent of young kids and a caregiver to older parents who live in Canada. So a complex situation that a lot of people are aware of. And then our most senior member of our panel, and Rebecca, I think you're right on the cusp. I think you may also be a fellow boomer. Rebecca Nordset is a retired teacher who lives in San Francisco and has spent many years teaching in the Bay Area. And so I want to start with Kate. And how do you see, I have a two-part question. One is, and I'm going to ask each panelist to share their age. I got everybody's okay to do that before, but tell us your age, perhaps what you think it tells anybody about you. Let's just start very simply, and then I want to dive into stories.
What it tells about me. Okay, so I'm 24. My name is Kate. And I think people have a lot of assumptions about Gen Z and what they stand for. And some of it I think is pretty fair. I will just share a little anecdote to kind of illustrate this point. I was recently in a Wall Street Journal article, which was actually kind of ironically within the conversation of longevity. I was approached because a reporter wanted to know when I thought middle age was and if I felt older than my chronological age. And so I kind of shared, I have worries. I have worries about retirement, about owning a home, about assets, about kind of what's coming down the line. And I kind of lack the wisdom to know how to deal with those things. And I read the piece, it came out. I thought, some good reflections from other 20-somethings, 30-somethings. And then I looked at the comments, and the comments were pretty cruel, I would say. I have a couple to share just to give you a little sense.
Did the word entitled come up anywhere?
Oh, yes. Okay. Navel gazing was also a big one.
Okay. All right.
Someone said, "Dear Gen Z, I am sorry you don't know how to have fun. Today's generation doesn't want to grow up and be responsible. The continuation of the overspoiled Americans continues, like no one had it hard growing up." So I think there's this sense with Gen Z that we are not willing to do the hard things that come with young age. And I have to push back on that. I think we know that that's something we have to do because, like it says, everyone has been here before. We are not reinventing the wheel, and that's not what we're saying. But what we are saying is in a lot of ways we're struggling, and we're struggling because we're lacking wisdom. We're lacking guidance in a lot of ways. We need, and I'm just speaking for myself, but for the most part, that reflects to me that I need an older adult, mentor, someone who's done this before to help guide me through this, or at least illustrate how they did it so I can have a sense. So yeah, I think there are a lot of negative thoughts about Gen Z out there in the world right now, but
okay, we're going to hold that. Thank you.
Yes.
That's extremely helpful. I want to ask you, Bill, to share your age and maybe perceptions or misperceptions that you've sensed with a few more decades of experience.
A few more. I'm 70 years old. I have a multi-generation family. I'm a boomer. I'm married to a Gen X. I have two children who are millennials, 40 and 37. I have a 22-year-old, so whatever that makes her Gen Z, and a 16-year-old. I don't know if he's still Gen Z or he may be an alpha. So a few things about that. I think having that range of children has kept me young. I know we're going to talk about, somebody's going to come up here and talk about music and ageism and how it bridges. One of the bonuses of having these children is I have been continued to be introduced to new music. I don't think I would have done or understood hip hop and rap if my older daughters weren't listening to it. It's not of any particular use, but I know that Nicki Minaj and Megan Thee Stallion are having a feud because of my younger son. And I know, unfortunately, and listened to Cupcake and Sexy Red. I don't recommend them, but at least they're on my radar screen. I think I'm an ageism buster. I don't play my age well. My wife would say it's my arrested development, my 14-year-old sense of humor. My experience of ageism, my most profound experience of ageism is an inside job. In my current employment that I've been in for 4 years, once I was hired, looking back on it, I recognized that I was apologizing for myself in advance. I was telling my younger colleagues, and they're all younger than I am by a couple of decades, if I start to lose it, you'll let me know, right? So I was already kind of, based on my presumptions about age and being nearly 70 at that time, that I was going to fail before I noticed I was failing. And that was and I got some coaching about 6 months ago. The founder, I was relating a little bit of this, and I was saying, I'm really loving this job. My ambition is renewed. And she said, you need to talk to your manager about that. She thinks that you're going to leave in 6 months because of some of the things you said a year ago. I said, oh my goodness, I need to let her know that I am charged up about this. There's things I want to do. So my internal story about my age, about where I should be in my life, was getting in the way of me being everything that I want to do still.
Thank you, Bill. Erin, Could you share your age and maybe the ways in which it leads to perceptions or misperceptions about who you are and what you're capable of?
Sure. I'm 41, and so my kids are 2 and 5, and my parents, who you mentioned, are in their 80s and 90s, living complicated situations of their own far away. But I think we have a wide-spanning generational series, which is great, but I definitely find that I'm sandwiched, mortgaged, and in constant search of caffeine. At the same time, I'm also looking for a lot of professional fulfillment, and I think a lot of my ageism has really been encountered in the workforce. I work in tech, enough said there. But I think a lot of it has also been experienced through the lens of being a woman, whether a hiring manager was asking me if I was intentionally should be screening for whether a woman intends to have kids in the future and whether they should be employed, or whether I got to help shape several tech companies now on their maternity policies and leaves, being the first employee to ever be pregnant at a company, which is kind of wild to think about, that being a challenge.
Such a thing, yeah.
Right. But yes, the first pumping station I had was a phone booth in a tech company, which with full glass. We had to figure out how to
Nice.
block the glass.
Well done.
But I think those have been some of the experiences I've had where people expect that because of my age or my intent for my family, or that I can't or shouldn't want to have career defining work, which is definitely a top priority for me.
Thank you. Rebecca, could you share your age and how it may shape perceptions or misperceptions about who you are and what you're capable of?
Yeah, I'm 78.
Rebecca, could you just hold up the mic? Yeah.
I'm 78, and I grew up in Los Angeles. So that's a very widespread urban sprawl area. I went to public schools, K through 12. I don't really remember being affected by ageism, either by my teachers. Then I became a teacher, and I think because I'm innately curious about everything and everybody, I really enjoyed learning from the younger generations. And if I returned to that school often, I would make friends there with the students, and they would share to me what their ideas were. So I'm unmarried. I live alone here in San Francisco. But I've still enjoyed people of all ages, and I just haven't felt it. I have felt sexism big time, often, but not ageism, I don't think.
Interesting. So how do you tell us a little bit? I'm curious about, I think as time goes on, there are different perceptions, or we find different ways of talking about an experience. So in your teaching career, when you began, were you asked the kind of intrusive questions that Erin mentioned about intentions for staying in the workplace or leaving to have children, or are you committed to the job? Did you encounter any of that?
No, no, but my friends my age did, but not in teaching, in medicine.
In medicine?
Yeah,
Okay.
like why should we accept you? You're going to stop and have a baby, that type of thing.
Right. Okay.
But I did not experience that in education. I don't know why.
Well, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe I wonder in education, there is a respect and a veneration for a teacher, for somebody who has wisdom to share with a younger generation. There is an expectation of a teacher leading, guiding, mentoring younger people, and maybe the roles are very clearly established as opposed to a tech startup, maybe.
Right. I think you're right. I mean, I went to public school, not private school, so you had the whole array of students who were coming there of different socioeconomic backgrounds, and I think all those students that I came in contact with had some firm standing at home, like respect your elders, if you act out in school, you're going to hear about it. So yeah, we brought respect for our elders to the school, pretty much so.
So yeah, it's maybe more defined role for each generation in an educational setting than in the wilds of Pittsburgh or consulting or the tech landscape. I want to go back to you, Erin. So you're balancing. I left sandwiched, mortgaged, and in search of caffeine. And Kate, you mentioned some anxiety about just your financial future, which I think affects a lot of people in your generation, and understandably, given the affordability crisis, particularly for when it comes to housing. I'm wondering how this, you can be real here, just us in the room, but like, do you ever find yourself like resenting boomers with their damn 4-bedroom houses that you really need for your family that cost so much you can never, make a down payment? Or Kate, the thought of like how, what age and stage of your life and career might you be able to, purchase property, which I think for our generation, that was kind of one of the key milestones of American adulthood. It was to be able to own a home. And I'm wondering, like, is that something, like, how big a worry is that? And does anybody grab it?
Yeah, as a relatively recent home buyer, I feel like we probably own about 30 square feet of our total house at this point officially.
Okay.
So it's definitely been a challenge, and there's definitely moments where I think like, why do so few people have such square footage? And if we could only have a separate room between me and the kids, then that would be really helpful right now. But I think that's one way to look at it, but not a very helpful way. I think we turn a lot to community resources, and especially like our park system and places to get outside and also be with other folks as well. So I think it's trying to really foster reaching out and finding people of other generations. Some of my most valuable friendships are those who are like 15 years apart from me. And so I think that's been incredibly valuable to try and find outward looking community spaces, as much as sometimes it feels frustrating that pensions, wow, what a concept. Right.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, I don't feel resentment so much as I feel kind of sad in a way where it's like, I would love to have grown up in the time where I come out of college, I work a okay job, and I get a starter home and I start my family early and I kind of go from there. And I'm not trying to idealize it. I'm just kind of comparing it to how my own situation is different. But at the same time, I think it means that the way we create milestones and narratives on aging in different stages of life is changing significantly. And I think a lot of that's for the better. But I also think that's kind of where ageism also festers in a lot of ways, because you create these shoulds or these sometimes outdated ideas of what we should be doing. And when you can't quite find yourself in those positions, or you find yourself past where you should be or others were, it creates room for this dissonance that we see, or that I experienced with the Wall Street Journal, where it's like some of the comments are saying, I was 19, had a family, owned a home, try working harder. And it's not a measure of that. You know what I mean? And
Right. I'd just come back from World War II.
Yeah, and it's like-
I defeated the Nazis. I was
Right.
done. I was ready.
Right.
Okay. So, Bill, tell us a little bit about the work you do now. You work with Mindshare Partners, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that work and what comes up when people are invited in the workplace to to prioritize their mental health, and you see workers of several generations. What are some of the common concerns?
So Mindshare Partners is a nonprofit, and our work is to normalize mental health in the workplace, really to help organizations create cultures that support mental health. And so some of the generational differences, and I have to comment on something you said, Kate. I am very skeptical of generational differences, although I recognize there are some contextual differences. I think a lot of the gaps are because older people forgot what it was like to be young, and forgot what I'm because I still have young children. I'm reminded what an idiot I am, but I remember, you forget the dumb things that you did when you were younger. I'm fond of saying, wisdom comes from experience, or good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. I say that to my children all the time. Now I'm digressing. So what we see in the workplace around mental health is that a lot of the tone about mental health is set by a generation that was raised to not talk about mental health, or to, if you have a mental health challenge. I was raised and trained in the business world, suck it up, push through it, don't talk about it. So how did it come out in my generation? Divorce, alcoholism, mental breakdowns of other sorts. So the generation coming up, the anecdote I tell is my youngest daughter at her university, they've repurposed some of the community rooms into smaller rooms so that students can talk to their therapists. No such thing that was inconceivable when I was in college, certainly. So the willingness to talk about it is coming into the workforce, which is a good thing. Some senior leaders are worried about it because they are thinking that Gen Z is going to weaponize mental health, and that I have I can't work today because I'm having a tough mental health day. Overlooking the possibility that maybe there could be a conversation about it. Why are you struggling? Is work having an impact on your mental health? Is there something that we can do that splits the difference between what your needs are and what the business needs are? We are trying to further those conversations so that people can be healthier in that regard as well.
So I want to talk about, what do people worry about? Because I think that's often anxiety, speaks to aspirations. It speaks to our commonality, regardless of what age you're at. And I'm just curious, Rebecca, if you think to when you were Kate's age, when you were in your 24, so early 20s, newly out of school, what did you worry about? What did you, when you thought about your future self, what gave you pause?
Well, the first thing was getting a job.
Microphone, yeah, getting a job. Could you hold up the mic?
Oh, getting a job.
Mhm.
Yeah, finding a job in my fields. And then, well, of course, I rented at the time, but I had an idea of maybe someday owning a piece of property, possibly.
So being able to save money,
Right.
finding a job, saving money.
I wanted to travel, and I did do that. That was really good. I can't remember what else I worried about in my early 20s. That was about it, I think, that I can think of.
Okay. What about you, Erin? What? I just want, we're all going to be 24 for a sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking back, I probably worried about being able to weather the totally bonkers things that, like, 9/11 was such a defining moment for my generation and totally unforeseen in a lot of ways in terms of what the lived experience meant, but just like
Mhm.
what else is coming, and that
Mhm.
uncertainty about knowing how we might weather things that now have shown to be like COVID or something else. And I think when I was 24, a lot of my focus still was on, like, how do I put together a career and then another career, because it was clear to me that I wasn't going to be able to have a single arc.
Because
I think just the situation for my parents, they were both in stable professions for decades and decades, and it was a linear path. But I kind of had a sense that given the shift in all of these external things, like, how can I prep myself to have a pivot? In which direction do I go?
got it. Bill, what gnawed at you as a 24-year-old?
Well, when I graduated from college in 1976, our class slogan that they put up on a banner marching to graduation was "Unemployed And a little bit later, I had friends who would say, a physics major asks, how does that work? An engineering major asks something about how that works. And a liberal arts major asks, do you want fries with that? And so it really was, I was an English major. I didn't know what I could possibly do. And so I was really kind of wandered for a while. I found a path, but it was, there were just a lot of question marks about what was possible.
Being an English major from a liberal arts college, I couldn't relate more to the unemployed banner. I mean,
Kate, you tell us about in working on the Grand People series. How do you find ageism? How do you get younger people to recognize ageism? First, tell us a little bit about the series for those who haven't watched some of the videos, and they're just so smart, and they're endearing, and they're enlightening, and they're not preachy, but they're very, very illuminating. So
yeah. So when
Tell
we
us.
started thinking about ageism, and we started thinking about how we could kind of start to communicate these ideas to who we thought need it most, which is younger people. We thought to social media, and so that meant for us, how do we capture the attention of young adults on a subject that maybe they're not familiar with, maybe they don't want to engage with it in the first place. And it came to us that, we have to be real, we have to be honest, we have to be funny, we have to be snappy. We have to kind of show stories that they're not going to be otherwise able to see. And so we created this Grand People channel, which is on Instagram and TikTok, if you want to check it out. And it features these wonderful older adults, all of whom are doing incredible things, but all of the things that they're doing, anyone can do. It's accessible. It's to paint a picture of older age where it's full of vitality and fun and humor and just weirdness. And I don't.
Examples?
What's that?
Examples, weirdness?
Yeah, one of my favorites is Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. I really highly recommend checking them out. Just a group of women in Massachusetts who scuba dive in their local ponds, local rivers, cleaning up trash. At one point, they hauled up an entire toilet out of the depths of the pond, which is actually pretty incredible. And the response has actually been pretty profound. I've had peers my age reach out to me kind of tearfully saying, I'm in this moment of all these question marks. As you said, I'm in my 20s, I'm out of college, and I'm into this unstructured world. I don't know what to do next. And seeing older adults thriving in ways, their determination, their creativity, and the fun that they're having doing it means a lot to young adults who kind of aren't feeling that same way right now. I had this wonderful interaction with my friend who had just turned 25 herself, saying, she's in a quarter life crisis, whatever. And she watched the Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage, and she was just crying to me on the phone, thanking me for I don't know why she was thanking me. It's these wonderful women. I could not haul a toilet up from a pond.
But to find the story and surface the story.
Exactly,
is
right.
a gift,
And just to get a little bit more of a sense that aging is not a monolith. It is not one thing. And a lot of the time it opens the door to brand new things you wouldn't think you would be doing otherwise. And I just don't think young people have realized that always. So that's kind of the goal of the project, and having those connections, I think, makes it feel so worth it, and then some.
Bill, what is one thing? And that is when you said the unemployed, I mean, obviously as a liberal arts major, but I think many of us relate to the unemployed banner. See a lot of nods out there. I also remember interest rates of 18%, right? And now people are going, oh my God, it's pushing 7%. Interest rates were like credit card rates are today, even though houses were more affordable. So the metrics always change, but human nature doesn't. And Bill, I'm wondering if you go back and have a sit down with 24-year-old Bill, what would you tell him not to worry about?
What a good question. I would tell him not to. I think the old the phrase that comes to mind is don't pet the sweaty stuff and don't sweat the petty stuff. And I think I sweated a lot of petty things. I think I would also tell younger Bill that you don't have to live exactly to your parents' expectations. I think that put me on a path for too many years that maybe I shouldn't have been on in terms of needing to attain a certain level of wealth, honestly, financial wealth. I think I might have gotten there, but in a way that was a little more soulful. If I had
Soulful,
soulful,
tending your
Full.
soul.
full of soul.
Soul, got it.
Or,
Okay.
I will just say this quickly thing now. I saw this a few months ago of many people die with their music still in them. And I don't want to die with my music not still in me. So I think if I'd heard that earlier, that would have been good advice to me at 24.
Rebecca, if you think about your 24-year-old self, is there anything you would tell your 24-year-old self not to worry about? Use the microphone.
I would just reiterate what Bill said.
Uh-huh.
Don't always,
Microphone.
don't always think that you have to do what your parents expect you to do. You don't have to always do that. You can follow your own star. Of course, that would lead maybe to more insecurity, but than going a traditional route. My parents worked in the same job for all their lives, pretty much. But if they had financial difficulties, and I know they did, they never discussed it with their children. So
Financial worries.
yeah, financial.
Yeah,
worries.
the parents were very private about what does your parent make? What what is what's a good salary? What's a necessary amount of money? There's this veil, I think, in our
Yeah.
generation. I was taught that was rude. That was just the question you never asked your parents. How much do you make? How
Right.
much does our house cost?
Right.
Can I have the baseball mitt? No, it's too expensive. You have no scale, no context.
Right.
Oh, Bill has something to say there.
My parents told me that when they got me a tricycle, and we ate hamburger for a week, is what they said. And just
Yeah.
quickly, my father was a doctor, but he went to postdoc and
Mhm.
did a lot of training afterwards. So he was 5 or 6 years behind his peers. I grew up in Nebraska, in Omaha, and his buddies said, you should invest with this guy because we think he's pretty good. And my dad didn't have
Warren was his name?
his name was Warren. They were buying me a tricycle, so they couldn't invest in. I was this close to being a trust funder, just like this.
That was a $30 million tricycle. Dang.
Had I known.
Wow. So, Erin, you talked about 9/11, and it seems like your generation, I would say, and Kate's, have been like just shaped by these giant geopolitical events, storms. The Great Recession is probably right when you graduated.
Yep, that was fun.
Nice. Okay. And you work in an industry in tech renowned for its stability and
Yes.
and family-friendly employment policies. And I'm wondering, how do you bring about change? There are a lot of people, in tech, they don't all sleep in their hoodies under their desks anymore. People do have children, and like Elon has 11 or 12 of them, but people do have children. They have elder care. They have lives. How does that work its way into the workplace? In what way, are people at your age and stage like bringing about culture change in this huge, unruly tech world?
Good question. I mentioned that I had the opportunity to shape a company and
Mhm.
help their policies get formulated. And so I think it's anything and everything from, I've usually been close to employer brand, and that kind of stuff is like trying to hire candidates. It's a fast growing company. We need more people to work here who are really talented. And the employee value proposition is something that's been really unique to dive into, and thinking about like, what is someone like Kate going to respond to in an ad? What is someone who's later in their career and has leadership expertise? Because sometimes tech companies lack that. How do we attract the people from older generations as well? So I think, as we're coming more into positions of like some budget, some decision making, that's been something that's been really top of mind, is that just because it's the way something was previously doesn't mean that we have to do it that way moving forward. I think I come from Canada, and so my stance on how American businesses work and how the like work environment happens is a very differing thing in a lot of ways. And so I think there's just that opportunity to just grab that baton and run with it, the same that you would with any other thing that you feel passionate about. But if it's there, if you want to take it and push it forward.
So go Canadian.
Sure.
Okay. We're getting to the point where I'd love to hear any audience questions. And shall we start? Any questions online? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So there is an interesting question online that I'm going to try and break down to two questions. The first is, could there be an underlying value or some dynamic cause of ageism in society? And specifically speaking from your own experience, have you ever felt like someone was trying to uplift themselves by putting you down because of your age, and vice versa? Have you ever felt uplifted by witnessing someone of a different age than you being labeled for their age, I would say?
Okay, that's several questions. Does anybody want to dive in there? Kate?
Just like first reaction, I think the tendency to paint my generation, Gen Z, young adults right now, as soft or entitled and lazy, I think is also in part because the people that are saying it want to illustrate that they have done hard things, they have been through hard things and done it the hard way. And so in that sense, they want to give credence to their own experiences, give legitimacy to that. But I also think in the name of delegitimizing what Gen Z does or goes through and who they are, generally speaking, just saying like, and I just keep thinking back to these comments. There's probably 500 comments on this Wall Street Journal article, all saying variants of the same thing, which is, it's not as hard for you, it was harder for us. And I just think that's such a pervasive form of ageism that I can't necessarily put my finger on.
You could call it pervasive form of ageism. That's just bullshit, honestly. I've thought a lot as I've been at Mindshare Partners for 4 years, and one of the things that I had to learn some things, and I had to unlearn some things. I was thinking at the time, there's a Zen saying about and I wrote it down, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. And as I was starting this job, I had to kind of remind myself that, yes, I was an expert, and I had to have a beginner's mind. And I also had to flip it, because I realized that even though I was working with younger people, I also, because of my experience, knew some possibilities that they did. But there's a difference between entertaining possibilities and having the answer. So trying to be in a mindset where you need to learn, that you have to keep learning, is, to me, a great way to fight ageism and appreciate what other people know already.
I can
Erin?
build on Bill quickly. I think being a people manager is a great way to be in a position to have those conversations pretty regularly. And I poke a lot of questions to ask, like, what is the sign around either experience or potential, to try and find those clues around hiring? Like, just because someone hasn't done that job, can they have the path to get there and what resources they need? Or if someone has the experience and expertise coming in, can they have the flexibility to show that they can adapt to apply it to a new model? And so I think I get really tactical in those types of questions to try and identify exactly that skill set.
That is so good. And it's reminding me of what I've been telling my children about college. And that is, whatever you study, what you need to learn is how to learn, because whatever you learn is not going to be good 10 years from now. But if you can learn how to learn, golden.
We're going to open the room. If anybody has a question. Oh, I see a few out there. I want to add real quickly while we move the microphones. This gentleman right next to Dave. I just want to say for our generation, if I may speak for the three of us, I am so glad we grew up without the comment sections and without social media. Honestly, it's soul crushing. And
I had that social media feed in my head. So I must say
well,
that's
yes, we all have the voice of judgment, sir.
Can you hear me? Can
Yes.
you hear? I just wondered, Camille Khan, I'm from England and I was part of the DCI some years ago. I just wondered that in defining people in terms of these groups, are you essentially becoming myopic? Because a 70-year-old man who is remarried has a lot in common with young kids and a Gen Z, for example. Gen X, 45 to 60, a 45-year-old and a 60-year-old have very different positions. At 70, you may be caring for an older parent. You may be looking at kids who are teenagers. So I think, you need, in a way, to come out of these categories and to think in terms of life stages. You may be starting a new business at 70. You have a lot in common with a person who's starting out at 24, who's building an app. So I think, I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying, I'm just saying that we need to think in a different way. The original definition of ageism is ageism against old people. There's a lot of ageism against young people.
That's right.
You got to rethink that. So the challenge is to think differently. That's all.
Thank you. Perfect. We have other questions, but I think that is the absolute, you've distilled this conversation to its essence, which is if I had introduced everybody and I said 78, 41, 70, 24, you would know nothing about the stories of our guests.
And
We know nothing about each other.
I would just add like empathy as well. I think that's ageism to me reflects an unwillingness to have empathy. And I think the best way to fight it is with empathy.
Perfect. I think we have time for another question. Yes, please.
I admit it's a comment. Comment, not a question. Can y'all hear me? Totally support your idea of stage versus age. I would ban generational labels entirely and even recommend substituting older people and younger people for generation. The word itself, makes us think in terms of these categories. And in answer to the question, sorry about my voice, from the virtual audience, thank you for being here. What propels ageism is the same thing that propels any form of bias. They all operate to divide us, to benefit the people for whom the system is working great, whether it's Black against white, straight against gay, whatever. So whenever we push back against being divided in these ways, we have the opportunity. It's been a great panel to find what we have in common in terms of goals and barriers.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Over here.
Our
A question
voice.
from our online audience.
Oh,
Someone wanted to, Patricia wanted to know your thoughts about leaving off your age off of your resume when applying for a job.
well, in the United States, it's not common to include your age at all. And we have two HR experts. I'm guessing that's, at least in a US workplace, that is a super no-no, right?
And recommend removing years of graduation as well from any college or anything like that.
I'm of two minds. I think when you don't put it in, it begs the question of how old you are. And it's got to come out sooner or later, I think. But if it's on my LinkedIn, it's by accident. So I don't know. I hesitated to put it in on LinkedIn because I thought it would cut off opportunities. It may be in there now for my full job history, and I don't care as so much anymore. But that's coming at a late age.
Yes, please. We're down to the wire here, but go right ahead.
So Kate, I was going to ask you why you think you got those comments in your piece, and then you said empathy. But I'm just wondering, why do you think there's a lack of empathy? Is that every generation feels, or that none of us feel like we're happy with where we are, or that we can't have a second chance, or we can't do it again? Or, I mean, the idea is that if you're successful, then you should be giving a helping hand to the younger generation and saying, hey, listen, let me help you out. So why do you think, as you especially do all these great projects and talk to people, why do you think there is such a lack of empathy between these different generations? Thanks.
Thanks for that question. I think in this specific instance, it's a couple things. I think on one level, older adults are feeling like their very genuine lived experiences and struggles are being delegitimized by what they see us doing. And I think what they see us doing is, in their eyes, not quite as difficult. I think if I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of those commenters, of these people who are kind of like, no, this isn't. And I do think it comes back to that, where it's a feeling of, why am I not getting asked about these hard things that I go through and like these experiences, while you are being put on this platform to talk about how you're worried about retirement and you're only 24, things like that.
Why am I not an influencer?
Exactly, where it's like, if these same platforms had existed when you were my age, I think we would be having the exact same conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's a succinct answer, but that's a very interesting question. Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank Rebecca, Erin, Kate, and Bill, and I will turn it over to Ken. Thank you.